thank you.
So I'm Representative Dare Rendon. I chair the Insurance Committee, and today we heard testimony on a bill that would urge insurance companies to promptly pay or face some penalties for not doing so, and in good faith to the home health care providers that provide services, badly needed services for catastrophic victims of auto insurance.
Yeah, you mentioned the time was right earlier. I know this has been something that people have been pushing for a long time now. Why now? I guess what pushed you over the edge to make you realize this is something that you would like to bring forward?
Well, when we passed the insurance 3 years ago, there was a lot of work that went into it, and we had several goals that we wanted to do. The number one goal was to reduce the rate for consumers. We have the highest rates in the nation. And so that was the real cause to get this done. But there's a lot of providers, a lot of interlocking pieces that had to come together for that to happen. And so we put a collaborative effort together and crafted legislation that would reduce rates, and the insurers agreed to do that. It would also give a grace period to uninsured drivers who couldn't afford that insurance, and that worked tremendously. We now have 166,000 more drivers who are carrying insurance now, and we expect that that will go up. And we also wanted to reduce the lawsuits. We looked to cap attendant care from family members because they were being paid 24/7 hours a day. So we went to the 56 hours of family care. And we had to take a look at the rates for the services that were offered because that's where a lot of the price issues were coming from. And those rates were capped. Everybody came to the table. But I think we missed one voice and did not understand the repercussions of how it would affect small businesses like the home care providers, who are the hands-on people that minister to these people on a daily basis. And that's what we needed to hear. Why we didn't do it a year ago is because we needed to see how it worked. And everybody had made a pledge to keep their part of the bargain, to work with everybody within the confines of the new insurance law, and they did that. But we have found that these people have not been paid, many of them since July 1st, and that is unconscionable.
I know that today when you were going to start testimony in this bill, there was a delay. Can you explain what happened there and what happens next?
We used a procedure that's not normal in a committee. We don't normally do this. We usually have everything roll right along. But we did it this way today because we were able to get all of these people here to testify. And we were able to do it without a circus atmosphere so that we could hear from them directly how they have been impacted and how it's impacted the patients. And really, that's our number one thing. When we crafted all this insurance 3 years ago, time and again, our committee was told that those who were already patients receiving care would not be impacted. They would be grandfathered in. And that's what we all believed. It was time.
Yeah. Have you heard from Speaker Wentworth since this morning's meeting?
No, I have not, but I know he's been busy this morning.
Would you like to...
Would you?
Who have you talked to from the insurance industry about the delay and why they are having problems processing these payments?
We've talked to them about the delay, and they haven't really explained why there's a lot of new rules for different codes, because the rates that we're using actually are based off of Medicare rates or Medicaid rates, and a lot of those rates don't apply to the services that these patients are being that they're using and that they've had to have all these years. And so there's been a shift in that, and we knew that was going to happen, but we passed the legislation 3 years ago. Everybody should have been on board with being able to adjust to that, and the insurance company should have just simply been able to shift their process and work with them to make sure they got paid so that these people could retain their services.
I know a lot of providers also are being overly cautious, but also trying to verify that they will get reimbursed from the MCCA. And so a lot of times they've explained for reasons for delaying payment was on their end saying that they've given excuses that they were stuck as the middleman between the MCCA, where they were given guidance that won't pay on certain codes, certain services, things like that. I know that we have some providers here that could go more in depth on some of the reasons that have been excuses for delays and denials. I mean, the fact of the matter is as Rep. Rendon said, why now? Well, we're almost coming up to a year from July 1st, and many providers still haven't been paid for any services after July 1st, whether there's a 55% rate cut or not. And I just think it's unconscionable to have these smaller providers, small businesses floating, a lot of them coming out of their own pocket for payroll, rather than the MCCA and these insurance companies who are sitting on 20-something billion dollars. The money's there to pay for this, to actually pay these bills, and during determining the process, if there's any overpayment, if it's not, they can always do a credit, do a clawback, sue for fraud. Why put that onerous on the small guy rather than the large providers, especially when we're seeing the drastic consequences to individual patients that we have an obligation to protect.
And I would just say Representative Berman is an attorney, and he understands this issue probably more than any of us on the committee. And I think his perspective has been a big help in bringing it up and addressing it.
So this is, so you're going to penalize our insurers who don't pay up their bill on, 60 days? What, they got to pay 3 times the amount?
Well, it's 90 days, and it's a rebuttable presumption, right? So it's just shifting that presumption there for, again, legal standards going into court, giving an excuse for these providers to actually give money, paying an attorney, going into court, where right now at just a simple 12% interest is no penalty at all for these companies. Especially when you heard testimony today from people like Bob and Eric here where, what's the penalty for an insurance company to continue delay, deny? Maybe they're going to have to pay 12% on that bill. Most of the time it's going to get negotiated. There's no disincentive. If you're a private business, right, you have subscribers to MERS. If somebody doesn't pay their bill, are you going to keep floating them to do the content? No, you're going to cut them off. Unfortunately, these providers can't do that. They're stuck in this system where there's only one person paying, and they're getting the burden of that right now.
So it's 3 times though, right?
Yeah,
3 times.
But
Okay.
it could be 100 times, and it doesn't matter, because if they just pay on time like they're supposed to, then they'll never see that penalty. It has to be a little bit of incentive to, hey, pay your bill. If I didn't pay my bills, I'm a deadbeat, right? I'd get a hit of my credit report. Let's pool the providers here and do their credit report, credit worthiness for these providers, and see what if they're at an 800 credit score. I highly doubt it after all the non-payment and delays that I've seen that have been sent to my office.
What's the time frame, Representative Rendon, on this?
Right now, they're supposed to pay within 60 days.
Oh, I'm talking about the bill.
Oh, about the bill itself.
Yeah.
I think we have to sit down and talk about that
Okay.
because there has been maybe a possibility that we might change the actual terms.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that going forward. But it's important that we get it out now so that people understand, because this has been too long of a period to go with that big of a deficit in a small business. And appreciate it.
It didn't move out of committee though, right?
No.
Oh, yeah, right.
No.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, that's the whole point, and I thank Chair Rendon for allowing it to be heard today, because it's always step one in the legislative process to actually get a hearing, right? To have that, like myself as a bill sponsor, advocate for the merits of this bill, but also, with committee presence and others to say, hey, maybe this 3 times amount doesn't make sense, maybe whatever, and that's working on that whole legislative process.
Can I hear Representative Bazat? What's your interest in this bill?
Well, it's a very complicated bill. First, I'd like to thank Chair Rendon for her courage and her leadership on this issue. we were told early on that let's wait a year and a half to see how this plays out. And I think in doing that, we've seen a couple things. We've seen 60 businesses go out of, small businesses go out of business. And we're re-victimizing the victims by making this retroactive prior to July. So I thank Rep. Brendan, I'm sorry, for her courage to at least get a discussion going on this issue.
And Representative Tate, what's your interest in this?
Same here. I think it's right around fairness. I mean, if we have providers that aren't being paid on time, especially those that are delivering these types of services, and we know, like Representative Brendan mentioned too, you know, we passed historic legislation, but we also have to make sure and have that responsibility that, you know, that we are putting in place the right processes and make sure that, you know, those people are being taken care of. So at the end of the day, I know for me, it's an issue of fairness. You're not getting paid on time. We know any other industry, that's going to be an issue, and that's going to be a challenge, especially with these critical services that the providers are delivering.
I applaud Rep. Tate for being here as well, and it shows that this isn't a partisan issue. This is really nonpartisan, but again, a bipartisan issue. The bill itself, I'm proud to have Rep. Bazat as a co-sponsor. There are Republican and Democrat co-sponsors, and there's been Republicans, such as myself, with this bill, with 4992, that changes the fee schedule, which this doesn't attempt to address. But others like Representative Tate, Representative Bazat, Representative Green, Rogers, that have Breen from Novi, trying to take up this mantle, seeing injustices and trying to effectuate positive change, especially for any unintended consequences coming out of our auto no-fault reforms. So again, there's a wide range of representatives that this is a very important issue, understand the importance of this issue, and is standing up to address this issue. So thank you for being here again, Rep. Tate, Rep.
Yes.
Bazat.
Representative Brendan, now I talked to you on the phone a few, I think it's been a couple months ago. We talked about this issue, and you said you were working with DIFs to see if we couldn't get the payments to move, but you weren't ready for legislation at that time. What changed your mind since then?
I've actually spoken with some of the home health care providers here and who've tried to go through the process to free up that money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been very cumbersome, and virtually there's been some applications, but none have been accepted. And so we have too many strings apparently in the process to get that money. But when you think about it, that money is taxpayer dollars that we set aside for that. And we wouldn't have to use taxpayer dollars if we could get the insurance providers to pay on time and keep these businesses viable. And that's the point. And I guess the thing that really broke the camel's back, I got a phone call from a friend who's been in that situation. She is a paraplegic or quadriplegic, has been for almost 15 years. She's the age of one of my daughters. And she called me and said, I'm sorry, dear, but I never had to worry about my provider. I'm being told that I'm going to be let go, and now I have to worry about this. Luckily for her, she is a school teacher, and she has had enough accommodations. She has a van she can get, but she needs help moving in and out. She's a real trooper, and she's just one of them. I've heard from many, and I know these gentlemen have too. And we have, we've waited, we've given it time, but no one else can stay in business without an income to pay for those services. And these people who have already been victimized once should not have to be the victim of trying to find health care because my provider is no longer going to be in business and I have to find my own, or they haven't been paid and they're dropping me.
Speaking of the bipartisanship of this, we've seen, at least on the Senate side during the budget debates, trying to get no-fault fixes baked into that language. Amendments like that have been voted down. In the House, do you see this as the beginning sign that there will be support for such amendments when we get back to budget negotiations?
I believe there would be. I think, we did this a little unorthodox, I'll agree. But the idea is to get the discussion started. And, you can't do that without opening the door and letting the people be heard. And that's what this was about today.